Hi everyone and welcome to the Wizard Engineer. In today's video, we're going to talk about Vue Composition API. We're going to learn what it is and how to use it in order to build large-scale Vue.js app. In previous video, we did our last video about Vue Option API when we did our second exercise. And then in this video, we're going to focus on Vue Composition API because for upcoming video are going to be concerned only Vue Composition API. Now in this video, we're going to learn what is Vue Composition API, how to create reactive property using ref and reactive, how we can create prop and emit event from a component using Vue Composition API. But also we're going to talk about Composable. We're going to learn what is a composable function and how we can use it to enhance code readability within our app. And then in the next video, we're going to refactor our app that we built in previous video in Vue Option API. We're going to refactor it into Vue Composition API. Now, what is Vue Composition API? Vue Composition API, it is a new way that has been introduced in Vue 3 in order to build a Vue app. And so we use it because it has some advantages over Vue Option API. It promotes scalability. You can see it promotes scalability and maintainability. It promotes also clean code and modularity. That's why we should use Vue Composition API because it has more advantages over Vue Option API. We can build large scale enterprise app. And now let's dive right into the code and see how it works. Alright guys, now let's get started learning Vue Composition API. It's time to move on guys. Now within the views folder, I continue where we left up in previous video when we did our second exercise. And you can notice within the views folder, I got Composition API. And then I've created a page, learn Composition API.vue. And then within the router folder, I've already registered and the path of our page, it is learn composition API. And then I use dynamic imports in order to load this component, learn composition API.vue. Now, if I get into the browser, you're going to see we run this page and I pass in the template tag and h1 Vue Composition API. And also, I'd like to inform you that my server, it is up and running. And now it's time to get started with Vue Composition API. Now here, you're going to notice I've created a script tag. This is the page. Let me remove this first. You're going to notice right here, I've already created a script tag. I didn't pass it under the template tag. I passed it above. See the style. Let me zoom out a little bit. You're going to see the script tag, it is above the template tag. And then let me try to zoom in. And it is the conversion of Vue Composition API. It doesn't pass the script tag under the template tag, but instead we pass it up. If we are working with Vue Option API, you should pass the script tag under the template tag. But as we are working with Vue Composition API, we are going to pass it up above the template tag. Now let's create a reactive property. And also you're going to, before I move on, guys, you're going to notice within the script tag, we just pass into attributes the length. We need to specify the length that we're going to use because within the Vue Composition API, we can use TypeScript by specifying TS or JavaScript. We're going to go with JavaScript right now. And also we pass it the setup attributes to specify that we are going to work with Vue Composition API. Now, how can we create a reactive property? We are going to use the ref function, const ref, let's say user input. And then we're going to pass it the ref function. And within the ref function, I'm going to pass in a variable username and then user email. This is how we can create a reactive property. In previous video, when we talked about Vue Option API, we used the data function like this. And then in the data function, you can pass in a statement, and then you can pass in our reactive property, and then we can pass in attributes. That's what we learned in previous video. Now in Vue Composition API, we just pass it. We just use the ref function in order to create a reactive property, but also we use the reactive function. Now, right now we're gonna learn ref, and then we're gonna see the difference between reactive and ref function. And then in order to use the ref function, we need to import it from Vue. Now we are going to display this data. We're gonna pass it right here, the data. And then if we get into the browser, you're going to see we are getting an object, username and user email. And also we can try to bound this data to a form. Let me try to create here a little form. And also the first input, it is going to be a username. We're going to use the model directive in order to bound data to an input. We're going to pass here user input, and then right here username. And that's how we bound data to, right here it is user email. That's how we bound data to an input. Here, up here, we got within the script, we got a reactive property, user input, and then pass it a ref, and then we just passing our property right within it. And then if we get into the browser, and if I pass here Ben, let me refresh a bit, you're going to see that the username property, it is going to be updated automatically, ben@gmail.com. You can see that our property are getting value in real time. Now we need to use the reactive function. First of all, we need to import the reactive function from Vue. And then right here, I'm going to copy this code, paste it, and also I'm going to change it to reactive. It is the same. If I come in the first one, the first property, with ref, and then we use reactive, it is going to work. Pass here Ben, you can see it is the same. Yeah, we just create a reactive property. Now, if we need to create another reactive property, let's say here, const, we just create a constant task status, and then I'm gonna pass it ref, say false, or I can create another one, loading status. I can pass here reactive, and then I can display the data within the template using two curly braces, and then if you get into the browser, you're going to get false. Now, but what is the difference between ref and reactive? We use these two elements to create reactive property, but what is the difference? I'm going to create right here a function. In Option API, to create a function, we pass it to a method object, and then we have the possibility to define our function. Let's say load, and then we can pass our logic within the load function. This is the technique we use in Vue Option API. In Composition API, we don't need to define a function. We just need to pass here a function like we are working in JavaScript. We are going to pass here function get data, and then right here I'm going to console the value of the user input, and then I need to bound this. I need to call the get data function I need to bound it to a button. I'm going to create right here a button, and then I use the click event, and then I'm going to say get data, and let's try to see. Let me get into the console, and now when I click on the button get data, let me pass it first data, ben@gmail.com, and then if I click on get data, you can see we are getting a proxy object. We are getting username. It is two property, username and user email. Now let's try to get data for the ref function. Right here we have reactive. I'm gonna comment this, but also we got right here the ref. It is user input. I comment it, And then let's try to get to this data. When I pass here Ben and email at gmail.com, and then if I click on get data, we are getting a ref implementation object, a huge object. It contains a bunch of properties. Let me zoom out a little bit. You can see it is many property, dep, v underscore, v is ref, row value, and other values. And then we can see we got a value property. It contains the username and the user email. We are getting a huge object. Now, in order to get access only to the username and user email, we are going to use that value. This is how you can get access to a reactive property that has been created with the ref function. Yeah, you can see when I pass here Ben and Ben at gmail.com, when I click on get data, yeah, you can see we're getting a proxy. It returns a proxy too. And that is the difference between the reactive function and the ref function. For reactive function, we do not need to pass the data value. But for ref, if you create a reactive property with the ref function, we need to pass here that value. And that is the difference, guys, between ref and reactive. Yeah, we can even try to get access to the task status. You're going to see right here, I passed that value. And let me get access to the loading status. If I pass here this, and then we click on the get data, we are getting false. The task status, it is a reactive property that has been created with the ref, and loading status, it is an object. You can see it has been created with the reactive function. And if I pass the data value to the loading status, we're going to get undefined within the console because it has been created with the reactive function. When I click on get data, we are getting undefined. And that is the difference, guys. And about function, for function, we just create a normal function like we are in JavaScript, like we are working in JavaScript. We don't need to pass a method object like we did in Vue Option API. It is simple, guys. You're going to learn it little by little. At the first time, you're going to see that these stuff are difficult, but as we are progressing, you're going to see that it is difficult. It is easy. Now here, let's talk about computed in Vue Composition API. I'm gonna create two reactive property using ref. I'm gonna pass here first name, and then I'm gonna pass here the first name. It is going to get a default value. I'm gonna say Ben, and then I'm gonna create the last name. And pass here last name. And then within the last name, I'm pass do. And then how can we aggregate this data, create a full name? We are going to use a computed property like we did in the previous video when we talked about computed in Vue Option API. We create a computed object like this, and then we can create a function, full name. And then the full name, we're going to use this keyword in order to get access to reactive property like first name and last name. And then we are going to aggregate this. We are going to concatenate the full name plus the last name. That's what we learned in previous video. But in Vue Composition API, we don't need to do that. We are going to do this full name, create a constant, and then we are going to import the computed property. Yeah, it is just imported computed function, and then it returns a function. I'm gonna pass it first name that value. Right now I'm passing here that value because I'm using the ref function. If I use reactive, I should pass only the first name, and then I'm gonna do this plus last name. And then if I pass within the template full name, we are going to get full name. You can see right here we're getting Bendo. And that is how we use computed in Vue Composition API. If I pass here reactive, here I should pass only the first name without that value, and then it is going to work. Bando, yeah. If you pass here that value, you're going to get undefined. You can see right here, they infers it, the first name to be an object. And if we over the last name, you can see they infers it to be a ref function. Now, guys, this is how you use computed property. Now, we're going to talk about the mounted function. The mounted. In Vue Option API, we use mounted in order to call a function when our component it is going to be loaded to the DOM. And then we can pass right here like we did. Let me get into a file right here within the post folder. You can see within the home page. Let me get into the post page. And you can see right here, we have the mounted function, and we just call the fetch post function when we are going to load the post page to the DOM. It is going to be loaded immediately when we are going to open. We are going to land on this page. They're going to call immediately the fetch post. Now, what is the mounted alternative in Vue Composition API? It is onMounted. Right here, I'm gonna comment this. onMounted. Here we use onMounted. This is a new lifecycle hook. onMounted, and we need to import it. It has been imported, onMounted. And then let's say we get our function right here, function fetch data from the server, and then we are going to console fetching data. And then when we are going to load this page, they are going to call this function fetch data. This is the alternative for mounted function. You can see we are getting the console fetching data. Alright guys, now let's talk about components. We already talked about reactive property. We already know how to use Rev and Reactive. We already learned how to use computed property, and we just learned how to use the onMounted lifecycle hook. Now we're gonna jump to components. Now we already talked about how to create a component in Vue Option API. Now we're gonna learn how to create a component and how we can pass data to a component and how to emit an event. Now, I got a copy of a table right here. I'm gonna copy a bootstrap table, and then I'm gonna create a component. Now right here within my folder, let me zoom a little bit so that you can see, guys. Within my views folder, you can see I have a folder, Composition API, and then within this folder, I'm not going to create a component within the component folder. I want just to create it within this Composition API folder. Now here, I'm gonna create this component. It is going to use data. I'm gonna say use a table .vue, and then within this table, I'm gonna pass in first the template, and then I'm paste my component right there. And then within the component, I have to pass the script tag above the template tag. That's where we just learned. And then after that, we need to pass the length that we are using. It is GS, but also we need to pass the setup attribute so that we can specify that we are working with Vue Composition API. In Vue Option API, in order to define a component, first we use export defaults, and then within the export defaults, we pass props, and then within the prop, we assign it an array, and then we can define our component, our props right there. Suppose we can pass right here users, posts. These are props that are table it is going to have. This is the technique that we use in Vue Option API. Now we need to use another technique that is provided by Vue Composition API. In Vue Composition API, in order to define a prop, we use a macro. And a macro, it is a function that allows to define a prop for a component. I'm gonna pass here a constant. I'm gonna say props, and then I'm gonna create a function define props. And then we don't need to import it because it is going to be imported automatically. And then you can just pass it an array, and then you're going to pass here users, and then you can see we are going to get access to these property users. We're going to do props dot users. You can see right here, I've already created a bootstrap table. It is a class of table. I'm going to add here table strips. And then right here, we can see we have three columns. The first one, it is an ID. The second one, the username, and the delete user column. And then you can see right here, I've already passed the v4 directive. I loop within the prop user in props that users and key user that ID. Now here, I need to pass here the user in order to display the username. Now we need to get into the land composition API.vue file, and then we need to import this file. Here in composition API, we don't need to register components. Here, I'm not just import this component. I'm do import user table from within the current folder that we are working in, and then the user table dot view like this. I need to add the view extension. Here, we don't need to register the components, and then I want to pass it directly to our template tag. Here, I'm not adding another column, and then you're going to notice you're going to get data. I'm going to pass here a class of core medium 4, and our table here takes an array of users. Now here, I'm going to define a reactive property using ref. Now here, I need to copy another array right here. I have an array of 2 users right here, and then here I'm going to define a reactive property. It is going to hold an array of users. I'm going to say const users. I'm going to use ref. We already talked about ref, and then pass it this array of users. And then here you can see if we get into the user table, you're going to notice that our component takes an array of users. And then within the land composition API.vue, we need to pass our table this data. We are going to use semicolon in order to bound this reactive property, these users. And that's what we did in Vue Option API. We just used semicolon, or we can use vbound directive in order to bound data to a component. Now, if we get into the browser, you're going to notice that we just passed data to our table component. Let me zoom a little bit. You can check it out, guys. See it? Yeah, it seems that we are getting an error. Let me zoom so that we can see. Yeah. Let me get into the console to see if we are getting an error. And then you can see we have an issue. Here, cannot read properties of undefined ID. And then right here, we need to fix it because right here within the user table, it says cannot read the property of undefined ID. And you can see right here, we have pass post instead of user. And then I'll pass here user, and then you're going to notice that our table is going to get data. Now you can see right here, we are getting a table. It is populated by 2 users. Yeah, you can see we got 2 users, Joseph and Albert. Yeah, we just pass our table data. Now, how can we create an event? We already learned how to emit an event from a component. In Vue Option API, in order to create an event that is going to be emitted from a component, we use the emit function, the emit property, and then we can assign it number of events that our table component it is going to have. Now we can say delete user, update user like this. That's what we did in Option API. Now right here, in order to define an event, we use another macro. Let me add first here a little comment. These are macro. Now right here, we need to use another macro. It is going to be define emit. We use this macro in order to define an event, and then it takes also an array of events that are user table components it is going to have. Now right here, we're gonna pass here another event. I'm gonna say delete user, and then we on this button right here in option API we use this. We are going to pass it first click, and then you're going to pass it emit. But in option API, we pass here a dollar before emit function, and then we can pass it the name of the function that we want to invoke. We are going to pass here delete user, and then we need to pass it to the parameter, the second the ID, user ID. And then if we get into the learn composition API.vue, we're gonna call this function. Let me call it, and then here within the learn composition API.vue file, I'm gonna create right here function, and then this function it is going to have a property, a parameter. It is going to be an ID, and then we're going to console that log this ID. Now we need to bound this function to our components user table. We are going to do this. We are going to pass here at, and then we pass it the function delete user. Now let's try to see if we are going to console the ID of the user within the console. Now right here, let me refresh again because our table disappeared. And again, we are getting an error. Define emit. Yeah, we should pass it an S, define emit. And then within the user table, we are going to pass it define emit. Yeah, let me overwrite this function and see if he doesn't have any issue. Define emit, and then I think everything it is okay. Let me refresh again. Yeah, you can see right here we should pass it define emit. This is the name we use in order to define an event for a component. Define emit. Also, it is a macro. We don't need to import it. All right, guys. Now you can see within the browser when I click on delete user, you can see we are getting the ID of the first user, Joseph, and Albert. Yeah, when I click on this row, we are getting here 2. You can see within the console, you're getting 2. I'm gonna click again on the second user. Yeah, first user, we're getting IDs of the user. And that's how we can create a prop and emit an event within the Vue Composition API. We don't need to use the exports default, and then we need to pass it props and emit properly. That's how we can create a prop and emit an event from a component, guys. Now we need to move to another point, which is, let me see the point, which is composable. Now we're going to talk about composable. All right, guys, now let's talk about composable. Before we dive right into the topic, I'm going to give you a little definition of a composable function. So what is a composable function? A composable function, it is a function that encapsulates a specific logic within it. It can encapsulate a logic of a specific task, like a property or a model. Let's say here, I'm going to give you a little example so that you're going to understand it pretty well. The first example is going to be related to a counter. And our counter, it is a variable that we're going to initialize by 0. And then it is going to have 2 functions, increment and decrement. And our second example, it is going to be a use counter, use pause service. Use pause service, it is going to be a function that is going to encapsulate the logic that we can have, for example, for a pause. We can create a pause, we can delete a pause, and also we can edit a pause. This is our second example, pause service. Now, here, we're going to start with our first example. Within the composition API folder, I'm going to create here a counter.js file. And then this counter, we're going to need first to import the ref function from Vue because we're going to use it. And then we're going to create a composable function. We're going to use the use counter. And then right here, you can see I pass use counter. and this is the conversion for we use to create a composable function, and then we need to export it. Now here within the use corner, I'm gonna create a constant. It's going to be a corner. I'm gonna assign it a ref to make it reactive and initialize it by 0. And now right here, we need to have two functions, increments and decrements. And then here, in order to increment, we are going to do counter.value plus plus, and then we are going to create another function that is going to decrement our counter. And then right here, we're going to do counter.value minus minus. And then right here, we need to, when we are going to import this function, use counter within the learn composition API.vue file, we need to get access to this data. Now to the counter variable and the increment decrement function. Now we need to return it. We are going to do this. We need to return the counter, the increment, and decrement function. And then we need to get into the learn composition API.vue file and import the counter and increment decrement function. Now we are going to do import. We're going to import the use counter function from the current folder, and then right here we need to use it. Right here we are going to use destructuring in order to get access to the kernel variable and increment and decrement function, and then we're going to assign it this function, use counter composable. And you can see when I over the counter composable function, it is free property, the counter, it is reactive, the increment, it is a function, and decrement, it is a function. Now here we are going to use increments and decrements, and then we need to get access to these values right here. I'm going to create another row. This row, it is going to be a class of core medium 4, and then we're going to pass it the counter, and it is going to have two bar-n, and this bar-n we are going to bind it to the increment function, and we're going to pass it a label increment, and also we need to pass it the decrement function, decrement. And now let's try to see how it works within the browser. If you get into the browser and then we refresh, you're going to see that we have our row right here. It is the counter, it is initialized by 0. And when we click on the increment button, you can see that we are incrementing our counter. And when we click on decrement button, we are decrementing our counter. And that is a composable, guys. It allows to encapsulate a logic of a specific task within it. It allows us to create clean code. You can see right here, I just encapsulate a specific task within the use counter function. You can see our counter, use counter, it is a function that encapsulates the counter variable increment decrements. Now, let me give you another example so that you're going to understand it pretty well. Let's say within the composable function, we got another composable. Let's say post service.js. And then with this post service, we need first to export it. Function, use post, say use post service. And then this post service, it is going to have some actions like function create post. Let's say this create post. It is going to have another function delete post and edit post. Delete post and edit post. We're gonna pass here edit post. And then right here, we just created a composable. You can see that this function use post service encapsulates the logic of a specific task. Like here, like we did in previous video about the post store, you can see within the post store, we just pass in all action related to a post. We can fetch a post, delete a post, and see post details. These are actions related to the post store, and that is the logic that we can use with Composable. And now I'm gonna copy the fetch post and the see post details. I'm gonna copy this, and then I'm gonna move it to our post service. And then right here, I'm gonna delete this first. And then right here, I'm gonna use only the two function, fetch post and the zip and the delete post. And then right here, I'm gonna remove this one. I'm gonna explain you the use post service by with two function. And then right here, guys, we need to pass here function keyword, and then we are going to create right here a reactive property that is going to store our post, and then we're going to use ref. It is going to be an array of posts, and then right here we are going to do post. You can see we have here post that value, and the post here, the data, it's returning an array of posts. If you can see my server, my Node.js server, which related to our exercise that we did in previous video. I've already run it, and then if we try to hit this endpoint that returns a list of posts, you can see posts. You can see this endpoint, it returns an array of posts. Now right here, we just assign it to this reactive property posts. We just assign it this data. It's an array of posts. And then right here, we need to return this function. I'm going to remove this. And then we need to return this function. We're going to use return fetch post and delete post. And then right here, guys, we need to use this use post composable. And then we need to import first the ref from Vue. And then right here, we need to get into the learn composition API, the Vue file. And then we need to use it. We're going to do use post service, and then we just import it from the current folder post service. And right here, we need to use our composable use post service. And then right here, we are going to use the structuring. We are going to get access first to the post variable reactive property. You can see when we need also to return this post, the post reactive property. And then right here, we need to get access to the fetch post and delete post. And when we over our composable use post service, you can see it returns an object. It is a post, reactive property, fetch post, it is a promise, and delete post. Now here, in order to fetch our list of posts, we need to use the onMounted lifecycle hook. Right here, we're gonna pass here onMounted. It is a lifecycle hook that allows to call a function when a component is going to be loaded to the DOM. It is an alternative for mounted in option API, in Vue option API. This is to pass here our function. And then right here is our function. It is a promise, the fetch post. We are going to pass it right here. We are going to await fetch post. And then you can see right here we have a variable post. And then right here, I'm going to create another column. Let me create right here a row. And then it is going to be a class of a row. And then here, I'm going to pass it this post. Now you can see right here onMounted fetch post. They're going to launch this request to the server, fetch post. And then if you get into the browser and try to refresh, yeah, you can see we are getting an array of posts. That's it, guys. We are getting an array of posts. And also, we can delete a post, a given post. You can see right here, we got a function, delete a post. And the deleted post, we can just pass it an ID 2. If we pass it an ID 2, it is going to delete a post. I'm going to pass here delete post, and then right here I can pass it an ID of 2, and then it is going to delete a post with ID 2. First, it is going to execute first fetch post, and then it is going to delete a post. Now let's try to refresh the browser and see how it works. You can see that we just delete a post with an ID 2. Right now, we doesn't have a post with ID 2. If we pass again here 3, it is going to delete the post with ID 3. Let me show you guys. Right here, we have a post with ID 3, the rise of G5 technology. I'm gonna pass here 5. If I pass here 5, it is going 3, it is going to delete this post. Let me refresh again, and then you can see we just delete a post with ID 3. And that's how we can use Composable to encapsulate the logic of a specific task within a single function. And that is the importance of a composable function. I think, guys, you understand. And if you doesn't understand right now, you're probably going to understand it later as we are progressing gradually. You're going to understand it. Now, guys, you can see that we just have a code which is clean. If we get into the post service, we can create also another function within this post service that is going to create a post function create post, and that's it, guys. We can have a bunch of functions within this use post service composable function that do task based on that do a specific task. That is the importance of composable. Now let's move to our next point, which is refactoring. I see you there.